So also, as far as someone was asking a question about teenagers and getting teenagers interested in mindfulness, and I'll just share this other slide here. There's so many celebrities in North America anyway who have an interest in mindfulness. Again, whether it's athletes or football players or pop stars or actors and actresses, maybe not for teenagers, but that you can see in the upper right-hand corner. There's a new Barbie doll called the Breathe With Me Barbie. But so many people that are, maybe our kids are interested in, who are practicing mindfulness. I also like to share with kids, again, a few different ways of getting them interested and to buy in. I think thinking about what already interests them, right? If they're interested in school, this can help them focus. If they're interested in the arts, this can help them be more creative, right? If they're interested in sports, it can help them be more athletic and focused better on sports, right? These kinds of things can really help our kids as well. Some kids are really interested in the brain science. In fact, I was working with this one kid who was a very high achieving high school kid, very stressed out. And we did mindfulness, again, I work as a therapist during the day. We did mindfulness every week for about a year, because he was so stressed out. And he was always very cooperative about it. And then one day he came in and he was actually taking a psychology course and he was studying different parts of the brain. And I gave him a little lesson on mindfulness in the brain and talked about the different brain regions that actually change in terms of the research of Sarah Lazar, who I know Angie knows, and how mindfulness actually made an impact. And he just looked at me and he said, "Dr. Willard, I always liked the mindfulness, but now I know it's real." And I was like, yes, of course it's real. Like, it really does do something to your brain. And so that's what got him really interested in mindfulness. So again, he did it with me each week. But after that, that was when he went and downloaded some different apps and started practicing on his own. The other thing that I do as a therapist, and actually I've even been doing this online in my Zoom calls, is we all have a little recording device right here. When I'm sitting there with a kid doing a visualization or guiding them in a practice, I'll often just pick up my phone and hit record and say, I'm making a 10-minute mountain meditation for Max. And I ring the bell and I guide the kid through that 10-minute practice, ring the bell again, finish the recording, and just email it to them. And then they can have that to do for themselves. It's not, when they're outside of the session with me as well. With kids also, I try to encourage them to teach other kids. So in schools, when school's in session, I'll usually have the older kids try to teach the younger kids some of this stuff, because they really look up to those older kids, just like our teenagers might look up to some of the celebrities that are interested in practicing mindfulness themselves. So those are just a few other kinds of suggestions about getting kids interested. And there's the other things that I want to talk about in terms of resilience in particular in families, and taking just a little bit of a step away from mindfulness and thinking about resilience in other ways. Practicing gratitude is one of the more powerful things that we can do ourselves and as a family. Appreciation, making a gratitude list, just writing down even a couple things that you're grateful for. And gratitude is not about pretending that the difficult things in the world aren't there, that there isn't a pandemic happening, or that we're not worried about our financial situation, or right, there's other things that are going on in the world. Gratitude is seeing that those are going on, but at the same time also seeing the good that's happening. Asking ourselves, and what else? Actually, my friend Jessica Mori, she calls this practice awe, AWE, and what else is happening right now? Yeah, there's this pandemic. Yeah, we're all stuck in our houses. And what else? Oh, and what else? My kids are still learning to read. We're still eating wonderful food. The birds are chirping outside. I'm getting time with my family. I still do have a job, right? This kind of attitude actually really helps us shift and see, it gets us away from what's called the negativity bias, where we're only seeing the negative right? Or we mostly see the negative, and it just brings in a bit of the positive, so we see things just a little bit more clearly, right? We're wired to see the negative. It takes effort to see the positive. And what else? Or in the States, I don't know whether it made it over to Singapore online, right at the beginning of this, when so many things are being canceled, right? Soccer was being canceled, and the school play was being canceled, and school itself was being canceled, and summer camp and concerts, and so many things are being canceled. Someone said, like, let's make a big list of everything that's not being canceled, right? And it was so beautiful. And I actually then did it in a Zoom meeting. And so I'm actually going to ask folks as well to maybe just in the chat box, just maybe write down something that you're grateful for, something that's not canceled. So I'm going to just write down, reading to my son is not canceled in the chat box. And you're welcome to write anything that you want to share with the rest of us in that chat box as well. So taking this time to practice gratitude, to see what's going well, that's important as families. I do this with my son at night. We just talk about what were the happy thoughts that we had throughout the day? What were the good things? And of course, he's 5, so he doesn't want to go to bed. Right? Yeah, listening and observing, mass, absolutely. Spending time with our families, these are not canceled. Right? So he wants to do like 1,000 things that he's grateful for every night before sleep. So we pick like 3, but it's a really sweet moment that we have to reconnect also as a family. Right? Music's not canceled. Going to talks is not canceled. Exercising in the parks is not canceled. Family ice cream. Oh, ice cream time is expanded. I love it. Right? Absolutely. Prayer is not canceled. Right? Right? Decluttering our houses is not canceled. Thank goodness, because you can't see the rest of my living room, but we've got some work to do in here. The wreckage of what my kids left behind with their Legos. Right? And, other things that we can do as families, right? Connecting. I was just thinking about, reaching out to relatives. My mom, my kid's grandmother, she's been reading to my son online on FaceTime. He's been having Lego play dates with kids around the world. In fact, Friday after, I guess it'd be 3:00 in the morning for all of you in Singapore, but if you want to come to my son's Lego play date on Friday afternoons, you are invited. There's people from Italy and South America and Europe and all over the place joining us. Right? We can do all these things. So what else can we do to build more resilience? And I think also I've been talking a lot about post-traumatic growth as opposed to post-traumatic stress. And post-traumatic stress develops when we feel out of control and when we feel helpless. And so one of the ways that we can feel less helpless is that we can be helpful. And actually kids who come out the most resilient, even after really difficult situations that they grew up with, when they were asked to be helpful, that's one of the biggest predictors in whether they come out the other side being more resilient. Right? And so I've been thinking about what are ways that I can get my kids to be helpful. Right? It's not just thanking the helpers that are out there, the doctors on the front lines, right? But there's little ways that we can all be helpful. Right? Maybe we can pick up groceries for a neighbor, right? You're in Singapore, you don't have a yard. You can't probably help your neighbors with their yard, right? But we can get on, go on FaceTime or go on Zoom and we can teach a friend how to cook, right? Our kids can do things like make beautiful artwork and send it to people, right? They can, do so many different kinds of projects that are helpful. Our older kids who are teenagers, they can tutor younger kids, teach them a language or teach them math, right? I'm here teaching mindfulness, right? A friend of mine is trying to start a project for college kids who are all university students, right? For them to be doing some teaching of younger kids and mentoring younger kids, right? All of these things are possible right now. It's probably not really a Singapore thing, but here in the States, people are writing on the sidewalk in chalk that you can erase, right? Just like writing inspiring messages to people, right? Putting teddy bears in the windows, right? Writing thank you notes for the sanitation people, writing thank you notes for the people on the front lines, right? All of these things are really, really incredibly helpful things that we can do and that our kids can do. They can play concerts online for their older relatives or the people in the nursing home or people in the hospital. So again, when we're helpful, we feel less helpless. We can also, when we feel out of control, we can't control the situation, right? And it's very unpredictable, but we can also, for our families, make things as predictable as possible. So that what I've taken to doing in my house, not every day, but most days, is trying to have a family meeting in the morning and follow, if not a structure, we follow a routine. We get up, we shower, we get dressed, we have breakfast, then we have family meeting, right? After family meeting, we do a little bit of schoolwork, then we do some outdoor time, then we do lunch. We talk at family meeting also about what we're going to do for the day, if we're going to go out, if we're going to stay in. We talk about what's for lunch, we talk about what's for dinner, we talk about what everyone's goal for the day is. And again, even if we just do most of that stuff, it helps our kids feel really safe and contained so that they're, again, and when everything is not predictable, right, in a month and 6 months, we can at least predict the next 6 hours. And we can do that for our kids. And that's really helpful for them to have something that's predictable, right? So I've been really trying to do routines and rituals every night, reflecting on the day, practicing gratitude, talking about what went well that day, talking about the difficult times during the day, things like that, previewing the next day a little bit. So all of these kinds of things end up being really helpful, again, for building more resilience so that we feel a little bit of a sense of control in what's uncontrollable, predictability in what's unpredictable, and that we feel like we're being helpful and making a difference and teaching our kids how to do that. Like, what an incredible opportunity, like, to be modeling for our kids how to be generous and helpful to other people and invite them in to do that. And generosity, I actually gave a talk about this, it's on my website, but generosity actually trickles out. Just witnessing an act of generosity and kindness actually trickles out 3 people. So if you do something kind for someone, they're then more likely to do something kind for another person who's more likely to do something kind for the next person, for the next person. It really starts to trickle from person to person to person. And that's what we really want in our societies, right? Is a little bit more kindness. And so when we do this ourselves, when we model this for our kids, and it also, what it does is it also regulates the different neurotransmitters in our brains. We get a regulation of our serotonin when we act in ways that are kind and generous. We get dopamine, which is a reward transmitter in our brain. So we feel good and we want to do it more. And we also get a little bit of oxytocin, which allows us to feel safe and connected with our kids and with other people in general, kind of cultivates that sense of trust. So acting in these ways that are kind and generous, it's not just a good thing to do, but it's also really good for us to be doing as well, and really good for the rest of the culture as well, and to be teaching this stuff to our kids. So it builds resilience with that. So these are just a few suggestions on ways to just cultivate a little bit more resilience in our families. And so with that, I guess I've gone for about 55 minutes or so, and I do know that there's a number of questions that we have here. I also want to, before we finish, just to, I'll put my website down here too, if you want to stay in touch, if you want to get any of the slides or anything like that. Also, if you want to follow me on Facebook or Instagram, I'll put that up as well. Can I share some of my recorded sound practice clips done with the students? Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally happy to do that. Okay. When we do breathing, is it advisable to be sitting or standing position? So really, it doesn't matter too much. I find it helpful to sit down, but I'm also really tired lately. When we're sitting, we can feel our breath in our belly a little bit more. So you can even put your hands on your belly. It's a kind of a fun thing to do with kids too. Your kid can even lay their head on your belly if you've got little kids, or a kid can put a stuffed animal on their belly laying down even also, and rock it gently up and down. We can feel our breath a little bit better if we're sitting oftentimes. It does help to sit up straight. Kids aren't great at sitting up straight. They're probably better at Singapore than they are in the US. What mindfulness exercises would I recommend for fear during this crucial period? Kids are watching you, and as parents, we need to appear strong. I do think that it's so tricky, because I think in the contemporary world, we're really taught to show and share our emotions with our kids. And I do think it's important that we do that. But worry and fear are ones that we want to try to avoid showing to the kids. And again, we're all going to lose it at some point. Many people I know have lost it in front of their kids. They've yelled at their kids. They've cried in front of their kids. They've worried out loud in front of their kids. We're all doing that, right? It's okay that this happens for so many of us. The thing to do when that happens is to try to just like repair with the kid, let them know that they're going to be safe, let them know that you're going to keep them safe. Again, like the pilot on the airplane, right? You want that pilot to be confident and to give you the information that you need to know. We're going to get through this. We're going to get out the other side. But like, whoa, it's bumpy. That's true, right? So when we do show our anxiety to our kids, we want to later make sure that we're showing them, what some of the solutions are, looking for the helpers, talking about the progress that's being made in terms of people that are keeping us safe, in terms of the doctors finding vaccines, right? Things like that, and treatments and things like that. So these are all really important. Yeah, and our breath actually can really start to shut down a panic attack. So the breath rate that we adults want to have is between 4 and 6 breaths in 1 minute, which is not very many. 4 to 6 breaths in a minute. So really breathing slowly. You can even do the 7-11 breath. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Back out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Doing that a few times can really stop a panic attack or stop that anger or frustration from really bubbling over. How can we use mindfulness to deal with inner grief and anger during my growing up years to my parent while taking care of my sick and aging parent now? This is such an incredibly hard question, right? I really feel for you. Thank you for asking such a vulnerable question also. And I think giving ourselves some self-compassion, I'd really recommend. In the last session we did some self-compassion exercises, which can be really helpful just for settling us down, quieting some of that, quieting some of the anger, and also really alleviating some of that grief and letting ourselves grieve at the same time for those difficult moments from our own childhood. And it's really hard with a sick or an aging parent right now, right? This is true, I think, for a lot of folks, again, around my age, kind of in my 40s, right? Where it's like I'm caring for my aging parents and I'm caring for my young kids. We call this in the US, we call this the sandwich generation or the sandwich years. But it's particularly complicated when we've got parents who we've got really complicated relationships with, and they're really aging or really sick at this point. I think finding some ways to set good boundaries, thinking about what are the things that you might want to think about saying, whether you say them or not. I heard someone say, and it might be worth thinking about for you, what are the things with your parents that you want to forgive them for, and what are the things that you'd want to be forgiven for? And whether you have that conversation with them or not, they're worth thinking about if our parents are really sick right now. But this is tough. And find a therapist, someone good to talk to, who's an expert in this. I think can also be really helpful. I'm a therapist by trade myself, so I'm always recommending therapy. And I also just want to say, if you have any other questions for me, feel free to email me offline as well. What do you do if you have a kid in class who's very disruptive and not participating in class activities? I think this really depends on the age of the kid, and it depends on the class and the rest of the culture kind of the class as well, what's going on. sometimes actually giving those kids a little bit of responsibility. I found as when I'm teaching mindfulness in a class, the kids having a lot of trouble sitting still, it probably means that they're, in a sense, they're trying to tell me that they can't sit still. And so asking them, do you want to be the official timekeeper? Do you want to be the official bell ringer? Or let me know when 2 minutes have passed or something like that. Kids sometimes rise to the occasion. Finding other things that might be going on with them as well if they're being really disruptive in class. But I think it depends really a lot on your style. I don't mean to be avoiding the question, but it does depend a bit on your style, the rest of the classroom, kids, because some of them, might be other kids that are setting them off or something like that, and certainly the age of the kids as well. Ravine, thank you. Living in multi-generational households with elderly grandparents is very challenging. We adults try to be mindful, and for the younger ones, but the grandparents are still very anxious, right? Part of building family resilience, any advice to help the grandparents or elderly be more mindful when they can be more skeptical than even the kids? Yeah, oh my gosh, what a great question. And such a challenging one as well. So I think finding ways to do this stuff as a family, and I think finding ways to find family activities, whether it's mindfulness or other family activities. Mindfulness is great, but I think other family activities like playing games, like doing other family activities together, having some family meals together, finding ways to get the grandparents to engage with the younger kids, maybe by reading or by telling stories, giving teenagers a project to interview their grandparents about what things were like growing up, things like that can start to bring the family together. But it is really, really hard when everyone's under the same roof. So we want to deliberately find ways to come together, but we also deliberately want to find ways to set really good boundaries. That, okay, maybe grandparents read to the kids for a half an hour in the morning, but then they really get a break later in the afternoon, and the kids really get a break and get some time to themselves, so that the parents can work or whatever it might be. And when we ask, the best way also to set boundaries, I think the research also backs this up, is not saying to our kids or to our parents or to our spouse, not right now, I'm trying to work, right? But saying, not right now, but yes in an hour, yes at 5 o'clock. So that we're not just pushing people off, but we're telling them when we want to engage with them. That's really important. Communication in families. It's also good communication at work, but to not blow people off, but to say, I can't have this conversation right now. How about after the kids go to bed? Can we discuss this at a different time? Again, with 7-year-olds, this is very difficult. With 4-year-olds, it's difficult, but sometimes with the other folks in the family, this can be helpful. I think, the more time kids spend on digital devices, instant gratification, the harder to be mindful. I think oftentimes I think these devices have really done a number on our attention spans as adults and our kids' attention spans for sure. And so I do think that that's really a challenge. There are some cool apps that you can get, and sometimes kids might be more interested in doing mindfulness if there's an app about it or something like that. There's the Headspace app, there's Calm.com, there's Stop, Breathe, and Think. Because I do so many mindfulness talks, all these companies are always sending me stuff. So I had something called a Spire, that's a little device like a Fitbit that you clip onto your belt or onto your shirt. And if your breath gets dysregulated, it buzzes your phone and says, you seem stressed out, take 3 deep breaths. The company Muse just sent me this headband in the mail the other day that you strap onto your head. And I haven't even tried it out yet. I could probably go grab it. And you do some meditations through your phone. And that's something, again, sometimes kids might do something if it's a little bit more gimmicky. So screens can also be useful. And then, of course, there's things like this that screens let us do. I mean, trust me, I wish I was in Singapore right now, and not, here stuck in my own house. But it's also really nice to just be able to get on Zoom and do this and attend online meditation sessions or listen to mindfulness authors read their books out loud for kids, or see celebrities leading mindfulness practices, things like that. Studying mindfulness amongst introverts and extroverts. Puneet, this is such a cool question. And I think this question of introverts and extroverts is really coming up a lot these days during the pandemic. And I don't know. I know that I used to be extremely introverted, and after practicing mindfulness for many years, I'm actually much more of what I'd call an ambivert, a little bit of both. So I'd be curious. I do think that introverts are probably drawn to mindfulness more than extroverts are. Most meditation centers tend to be full of introverts who are kind of happy to be there oftentimes because there's not so much talking, or at least that's been my experience sometimes. A friend of mine who's a mindfulness teacher is writing a book about introverts and extroverts, and I'll have to ask him. He's a really cool guy. So if I get any answers, I'll follow up, or if you email me, I'm happy to follow up on that. Dr. Willard, Jessica, hi Jessica. Does mindfulness help post-teens with anxiety attacks and mood swings? Yes, absolutely. So mindfulness is fantastic for anxiety in particular. So anxiety has kind of become a real specialty of mine as a clinician, because I think it's so much helped by mindfulness. Again, just regulating our breath. Do that 7-Eleven breath or that hot chocolate breath, and you'll find that the body starts to relax, and that it becomes really impossible almost to have a panic attack if you do a couple minutes of those breaths. Mood swings too. Now, medication is also helpful, and cognitive behavioral therapy is also helpful for these kinds of things, and checking one's hormone and thyroid and things like that are also really important. But mindfulness can really help level out people's mood swings for sure, because again, it just helps us to regulate our mood. It's really activating and creating new connections in the parts of the brain associated with regulating our mood and associated with positive emotions. So we end up having more positive emotions. So it can be really helpful. I've got tons and tons of research that I didn't actually get into, particularly in my slides. But there's a lot of really wonderful research on some of the things that mindfulness can be helpful for. Where's my other research slide? And there's just thousands and thousands of studies out there for anxiety, for depression, for addiction, for post-traumatic stress, for stress in general, things like that. Here's a kind of shameless plug for all of my books also, by the way, which are available in English as well as in Mandarin. And yeah, I think that's probably what would be interesting to folks in Singapore. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you, Angie, and thank you for the Brahm Center for having me. And please stay in touch if you've got any more questions. And I certainly hope we'll get to meet some of you in person at some point. So thank you again.
Thank you, Chris. That's lovely. Would you just put that last slide up again and expand it so that's easy for everyone to look at it? I've actually asked Chris to put that slide up so that you could actually order the books via Book Depository or Amazon.com and get those books into your homes, and you can start introducing those practices to your children. One of the best ways of introducing mindfulness to your children, apart from using those techniques that are in the books, is to be a practitioner yourself. It's so important as parents that we need to know how to calm ourselves, especially when our buttons are being pushed. Our kids know us more than most of other people, and they are most effective as well in pushing our buttons. So when we have that ability to calm ourselves down, and they see that, wow, mindfulness really works on mom or works on dad, they would then become inspired, and they would want to follow our footsteps. But if we're trying to introduce mindfulness to them and telling them all the benefits, and yet we look like we're always being upset or annoyed and even flying off the handle, it is not helpful, because it's like, well, you want me to do it, but you're not doing it, Mom. So it's really important to be the role model, because they learn so much from what they see and how we behave than what we say. And we need to be authentic. We need to be embodying these principles and attitudes of mindfulness. So if you have not taken a course before, please do, because there's only so much you can learn online or using your own books or apps. It's nothing like really going through a course, which is why universities and schools still exist. So if there are no more questions, I would also like to highlight to you that next weekend, Dr. Fidel is going to be giving a talk, and he's done an amazing amount of research on how mindfulness helps with pain management. And so go to our Facebook page or website and get the link to register for the Zoom talk next weekend. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank my team, in particular Ching Sun and Yu Jun, who have been working so hard to keep up with the pace of how we're serving the community. Although we've been locked down, working from home, but as you can see, Brahm Center hasn't stopped its efforts to serve you and to make a difference in the community to improve our well-being. So I hope that Singapore Mindfulness Conference in August will take place. We are still hopeful. And with the changes that we are seeing in terms of the community spread, it's very optimistic. So let's stay optimistic, and we hope that Dr. Willard will be coming to Singapore to conduct live sessions, which I'm sure many of us will be very excited to be in the same physical room, apart from being in this virtual room with him on 2 occasions now. And I'm very, very grateful to him for having accepted our invitation to conduct these sessions. And he's been doing it free of charge. So, you know, I'm really appreciative, and I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone, that his generosity and kindness have been very inspiring. And he's been saying to all of you that if you need any of his slides or you'd like to reach out to him, he's given you his contact as well, that you can do so. So that's really gracious. And I'm also happy to announce that Dr. Sarah Lazara will be coming back for another session with us at the end of the month. And she's going to be sharing the research on how mindfulness helps with slowing down aging. And I'm sure many of us are very keen on that. And you can see Dr. Willard having become younger within 2 weeks.
I shaved my beard and I'm 20 years younger.
So it shows. And I'm not in my uniform today because I really feel like I want to, that is my day off. I haven't been taking a single day off fully, but I know, but it's been fulfilling to still be able to serve despite being locked away.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to put up this slide for you to be able to take a screenshot of the QR codes of the foundation courses that are coming up starting this week. Okay, my dog's barking. But you can always go to our website. So with that, thank you once again, Chris. It's been really an honor to have you, and thank you to everyone for being part of this program today. So any last words from you, Chris, before you sign off?
That should be it. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe. Please stay safe and be well. Yeah, take care. Thank you so much. Thanks again, Angie.
Lovely. Okay, everyone.
Good night or good morning.
Yes, and good night to you. Sleep well. And to everyone out there, have a great day ahead. We're alive. We're COVID-19 free, and we have a family with us. So that's a lot of blessing. Take care. Bye.